I'm your host, Jason Hopcus, and honored to have Montee Ball with us today. Montee is a former running back for the Wisconsin Badgers and Denver Broncos. At Wisconsin, Ball was a two-time All-American, three-time Big Ten champion, 2011 Heisman finalist, 2012 Doak Walker Award winner, and holds the records for the most touchdowns ever scored by a running back in the history of the NCAA. Ball was drafted in the second round to the Denver Broncos, where he played with Peyton Manning and helped lead the team to Super Bowl 48. Now a proud father, a published author of his book, Nowhere to Run, recovery coach, and clinical outreach manager for an addiction treatment facility, Montee spends the majority of his days helping teens and young adults get connected to effective mental health and substance use treatment. That's a mouthful, Montee. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today for Everybody's Perfect Community.
Absolutely. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's always humbling, and it's also quite the privilege as well to have someone like yourself with the reputation, beautiful reputation that you have, to want to chat with me. So thank you for having me.
Well, and the pleasure is mine. And likewise, when we first connected, a mutual friend connected us, I was so inspired by your story, primarily because of the work that you're doing with youth and teens, but more importantly, how you came to this work. I know you had a deeply personal journey with mental health and kind of substance abuse and use issues that led you to doing this work today. And I really would like for us just to have an open and honest conversation about how you got here, and then really move into what we're seeing, affecting and impacting our youth and teams today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Where to begin? I mean, obviously, football is a huge part of my story. Of how I got to where I'm at today. That being just wanting to, just having that drive, right, to want to play in the NFL. Started at the age of 8, grew up a Denver Broncos fan, and that's been my mission. That was my mission all the way up until age, 25 when I retired from the NFL. But of course, I wanted to be a running back for the Denver Broncos, and I worked my tail off to get to that point. And so, obviously, with my story, they I did not anticipate falling victim to a substance, right? That's something that my family, we never really addressed a lot. So my father's in recovery, but it was more
Okay.
so of like hey, it seems like he's doing fine, he's doing well, he's really focused on football. Obviously there were times when I would dabble around with alcohol in high school and stuff like that, but I still had my mind set on my dreams. And so, again, no fault of my parents. And of course, we're going to talk about that here later on in the show, of course, of what we're starting to see with the relationships with parents and teens. But for me, it was something that I wanted to do. But of course, falling victim to a substance is what derailed my life in a sense. But I'm able to get back on track right now, and so I'm excited to share more, of course, and I'm gonna give it to you here to see where we go.
Well, thank you for your vulnerability. And it sounds
Yeah.
like, just what you shared with us, some of your dabbling with substances started in high school. And I know that that led to a progressive issue with substance abuse. Kind of walk us forward a little bit. I mean, you had this 8-year-old dream that you wanted to play on the Denver Broncos, and you made it,
Yeah.
and like many things in life, there are so many twists and turns in how we get to where we want to go. Like, often getting there is the goal. We don't really anticipate what being there is going to be like.
Mm.
It sounds like maybe once you got there were some unknowns that you hadn't expected, that you had to navigate, that really put you in a dark place.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, so many, and that's what I always talk about whenever I share my story, right? Just had the opportunity of sharing it last year in front of about 400 students, frat students, I should say, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I always talk about that, where it's, you have this vision, right? You have this plan of what it is that you want to do, especially when you're at that impressionable stage in your life, right? That
Right.
being a teenager in high school, and then of course worrying about where you're going to go to college if you want to obviously go on to go to college. There's a lot of pressure there, right? And so for me, I had this plan of what I was going to do in regards to football, how I was going to train, what I was going to eat, all of the above, right? But I did not develop a plan for what I was going to do when life got difficult, right? How I was going to manage stressors. And so that is what I always talk about. how to manage stressors. So for me, yes, my relationship with alcohol started to develop there in high school, right? Really starting to see the more so popular, very popular kids, right, getting a lot of attention in school, and I kind of wanted that, right? They're
Right.
talking about these after school parties, they're talking about all that stuff that I wasn't a part of, and I kind of wanted to experience that, which we see that a lot with teens today, right? We're talking about peer pressure here, and so of course that developed and that accelerated in a sense once I got to college, right? A little bit more freedom, not really near my parents, not living in my parents' home. And so for me, it was okay, let's still focus on this football, but also I'm an adult. I can go and experience more partying and more X, Y, and Z, which was a poor decision that I made because for me, with my father being in recovery, um, we always talk about the nature versus nurture, right? And so the whole the genealogy, the epigenetics, um, I have that gene. I have that gene. So I developed a different relationship with a substance as opposed to my friends. And That did derail me. And so once I had the opportunity to go on to the NFL, accomplishing my dream, right, of being drafted by my favorite team, the Denver Broncos, I did not address my relationship with the bottle. And of course, you give a 21, 22-year old money, you give them fame, X, Y, and Z, right? There was a lot more opportunities to dive headfirst into that, and I cratered. I cratered. Just to be straight out, I dove headfirst into alcohol. I started to My performance on the football field started to decline. The coaches started to see it. The coaches started to pull me to the side and ask me if I needed any help. Um, but of course, someone under the influence early on in their active use, right? I told them that I have it under control. I got it taken care of, which of course I did not. And this snowball effect, right, it snowballed into aggression, right? Because I started to see that I'm giving too much attention to alcohol. I'm starting to see what it's doing to my life, and it was a tough pill for me to swallow. And so everyone around me started to reap a different Montee, an upset, a hurt, an angry, a depressed Montee. And with that, um, I took my frustration out on someone very close to me, and I, rightfully so, spent a couple days in jail, and then from that moment, hopped into IOP, made my amends, didn't blame anyone but myself. Um, had over 70 plus hours of just individual therapy, not even counting group or family. And that has led me to where I'm at today. 8 years in recovery, and don't plan on looking back.
Well, I'm grateful to celebrate 8 years with you. Kudos to you for on the journey for doing that important work. I think the thing that really is coming up for me and is resonant, in working with teens for the past 5+ years, the one thread that I always noticed in talking with teens was this element of perfectionism, which is
Mm,
how Nobody's Perfect was actually born. And recognizing that today there is a tremendous pressure and expectation in most of us to show up and be perfect.
mm.
And as our tagline says, perfection isn't real, your story is. Really recognizing that we are hardwired to show up and do our best, even if it isn't realistic. And I think that that's, you absolutely fell prey to that. I mean, you had a dream, you were focused on fulfilling your dream, and we're laser focused in going that direction. And by your own admission here, like you weren't really prepared or had the tools to navigate all the other stuff that comes along with life. And frankly, I don't think that's an uncommon story. While it's unique to you, there are many of us who get focused on going a direction and then lose sight of the fact that there are all of these external factors that really come into play of living a successful, healthy life that, frankly, the world has not given us tools to prepare for.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it. When we talk about pressure, especially with teens, of course, right? Again, impressionable stage in your life, there's this pressure of, am I going to go to college? This is familial pressure, right? Of, I want to make my parents proud.
Right.
That's a
Or I
huge.
want to achieve my dream at any cost.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so for me, during my journey, it was I want to continue to make my parents proud, right? I want to continue to make my sisters proud. Um, but I also wanted to experience life it outside of just grinding away at football, which yeah, there's way more things than partying and drinking alcohol. But for me, living in the college life, that's just what I thought it was like. And
Right.
so, yes, there's this pressure, this external pressure of having to be perfect. And I will always love the game of football. I will always love sports, team sports, always, individual sports, whatever that may look like. I'll always love it. But the game of football also taught me, instilled in me that, don't let your opponent see you cry. Don't let your opponent see that you're bleeding. Don't let them see that you're tired. And that bled over into my day-to-day life where it's this stoicism, right? This being stoic. I'm not going to tell anyone how I'm feeling. I'm not going to wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm fine. I got it under control because that's just
Right.
what I was taught.
Right. Well, and the
Until it
reality is whether you were taught that or not, or that's what the system instills in you,
yeah.
ultimately it became more than you could manage regardless.
Absolutely, absolutely. It boiled over, and that's why I do what I do today because um, for me, it's this. If I don't do what I'm doing today, then it in my mind, then it all happened for no reason. It all
Right.
happened for no reason. I get it. For me, I'm a believer in a higher power. I am, and for me, I believe that the sport was given to me to create this platform, right, to speak on something way greater than myself, something that every single human being is impacted by either directly or indirectly. It's either you or someone you love or care about that is suffering in silence with substance use disorder. And so I will continue down this journey until my last breath.
Well, and I love that, and we're the world is better because you're doing that, and I come to this work from a very personal story also, and achieved a lot of success very early in life, and then similarly, I'm going to say I had a breakthrough, but I legitimately had a breakdown, and that undoing led me to this season of my life and doing this work in service of others, specifically related to mental health. So I think you
Mm,
and I are aligned in that way, but recognizing that the pressure to be, to get, to have, to do that followed me in all of those previous seasons, it was just too much, and I don't think it's sustainable. And if there's anything that I can impart as wisdom from people listening and somebody who has dropped their basket, so to speak,
mm.
is to realize that um, we are not alone, and that while your story may be unique to you, there are many others along the way who have also experienced and gone through what you're going through, and help is available.
It is. It is. And I'm so grateful as well for what you're doing, Jason, because there's so many ways up this hill, right? You can go to treatment, which I'm an advocate for that, obviously. You can do whatever it is you want to do. Obviously, the medium that you're choosing, right, is being that voice, being that platform, starting those conversations, right?
Right.
I think that's extremely important for parents, right, who may be having questions about what their teen is experiencing, right, or experimenting with, right? And so I think this is very important what you're doing. So I'm here to thank you as well. I'm here to thank you
Well,
for the work you're
that
doing.
that is appreciated, and really using a platform like this is a way to have those conversations that people don't want to have. Like, I've often wondered why we make these conversations so taboo when the reality is they affect a lot more of us than we're thinking.
Yeah.
So so walk me back. So you cratered, you know,
Yep.
you ended up in a dark place that led you to recovery. What was the moment, kind of the watershed moment, that you recognize this life is unsustainable? I need to move forward in a different direction, and this is how I'm going to do it. I know you had a couple of different iterations getting there. What were
Yep.
those next steps like that led you to moving into the work you do today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's again, I'm straightforward. I'm an open book. I think my story, I like it's of course I did not need to you know, harm anyone to get to where I'm at today. I would love to go back and change that, but I would most likely be dead or in prison for the rest of my life right now if I didn't have that wake up call. And my wake up call was when my feet touched that cold floor in jail. Never a record before in my life,
Right.
never even like a speeding ticket. I mean, I was a straight, I mean, I was a really good kid, a really good kid. Um, and once that happened, once I spent a weekend in jail, I was like, whoa. I was like, I was like, dude, what's going on here?
Life has
This
gone astray.
Yeah, this just doesn't happen. What's going on here? And so that was a wake up call for me, and it was a pretty straightforward thing. Yes, I still, about a week to 2 weeks after that experience, I'll still like, I'll figure it out. I'll be fine. But thank goodness I have the support of my family, where my mom was crying to me and saying, "You need to go get help. You need to make a change." Um, and so once I got into IOP, and once I started to really dive deep into um, my own experiences, trauma, things I've dealt with, life, right, with my therapist, who I still see today. I love the guy. I was able to put some closure to some things, and move on and move on. And once I had the opportunity to move on, I told myself, like, look, I know that there's other people struggling with this. I know there is. And again, if I don't do what I'm doing today, then it all happened for no reason. And so I wanted to get into the behavioral health space because I feel like I can continue to help people, like I have been doing. And also, it's embedded in our family as well. My older sister is a clinical psychologist. She provides therapy for military families in Virginia.
Oh,
And
great.
so, yeah, so it's kind of embedded in our family as well. We do not after my experience, we talk about it a lot. And so I want to get other families to that point. I want to get other families to that point. So what I do today is I have the opportunity, of course, marketing for an organization that provides treatment for teens and young adults, but also I have the opportunity to speak with these families and speak with clients and speak with youth, right? Of what it looks like, right? This peer pressure, what it feels like, some of the options that you have available for you, that being resources in the community. And so not only do I just have these conversations and walk away, I provide them with resources. And for me, that fills my cup. It fills my
Well,
cup.
and it's incredibly impactful work. I mean, I guess as a starting question, Monty, what do you think a parent who's listening that maybe hasn't sat in front of you and isn't down the path the way that you're meeting parents at, what are the
Yeah.
things that parents need to know that they don't know? Like, explain the problem to us because I think for
Oof.
most people, it's a lot bigger than they think it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we can. The so I will talk about. So we see a lot of problems, of course, with insurance literacy, right? Insurance literacy seems to be a common issue, and I think it's designed that way on purpose as
Sure.
well. And so that's an entire monster as well, right? Where we have folks who have no behavioral background making decisions, right, for folks of what they're going to pay for in XYZ. I think that is an inappropriate structure that, again, that's an entire different monster. But I think we talk about insurance literacy. So for those parents that are listening, you can reach out to treatment facilities to just ask questions regarding insurance, regarding, of course, ask those questions to your provider, but obviously you can ask those to these treatment providers as well, of just what it is, insurances that we take, how is it going to look, what's the process going to look like, how many days is it. I mean, you can ask any question and we will sit there on the phone and answer every single one to the best of our ability. Also, what we're seeing with teens is this relationship, right? This is very turbulent with teens and parents right now, because parents, of course, right, are seeing all the exposure that teens, youth are experiencing on social media, the
Right.
glorification of sex, money, and drugs, right? I'm just going to go ahead and say it: sex, money, and drugs, the glorification around that, doing anything for likes, wanting to be a part of those crowds that are getting those likes, but they're doing things that are not going to benefit their lives whatsoever down the road. And so we see that all the time. So some of the conversations that we are having at Sandstone Care, where I'm currently employed at, I've sat into some group therapy. Some of the conversations that we're having is you have to pay attention to some of the habits that you are creating. Now, this is, of course, geared towards the teens. As for the parents, focus on that as well. Look at some of the habits that your teens are creating and explain to them that these habits that you are creating, more times than not, you're going to fall back on these habits when times get difficult. Me, I was one, dabbling with alcohol. Yeah, it was something that I was just doing, didn't really develop a very strong relationship with it in high school. But once those stressors and came about, right? Having to keep my GPA at a certain spot, right? To keep my scholarship, having to perform at the highest level, that being in college football. Those stressors came about. What did I fall back on? Ooh, this bottle made me feel good.
Right.
This body can feel really good. So focus on those habits as well. And so again, I think the biggest thing that we are seeing right now is a very turbulent relationship between teen and parents. Teen doesn't believe that the parents have the best interest in them. And the parents, more times than not, are getting very frustrated with how segmented and spread out these the system is, the very bureaucratic system, excuse me. And I'll get off my soapbox here with this question, but I guess all in all, what I'm saying is there are resources out there that can help you to narrow down your search for exactly what it is you're looking for and what you and or your team needs.
You're spot on there. And I think that the other thing to point out is, you talk about the chasm between youth and their parents. There's
Mhm.
another thing, we've got that dreaded T word in the middle, technology, and we've got parents who are adaptives to technology, and we've got youth who are natives to technology. And I think there is a disconnect that comes from, I'm learning to use this, you've always used this. So I hear a lot of parents saying, I don't know, my youth knows more about things than I do related to technology, not really knowing where to connect. But there's also this element, to put a little bit back on parents in recognizing the world is different than it was when you were raised.
Very
It
different.
moves faster, there's more access to information, drugs are worse, peer pressure is worse. All of the things that we faced growing up as older generations really has exponentially increased and really acerbated to the point that our teens are a pot that's about to boil over. They're being bombarded by sex, money, and drugs, like you said earlier, over
Yeah.
and over and over, kind of in this constant repetition, and the need to fit in and to be a part of whatever sense of community you've decided you want to be a part in. The peer pressure is at an all-time high. And
It,
I, I think from that understanding, recognizing that youth are looking for a way to take the pressure off. And for you, it was alcohol. And for many others, like, what are you seeing youth coming in? Because I know you also are dealing with mental health issues and substance abuse issues, and you usually don't get one without the other. But help parents listening. What are the things that youth are really coming in being impacted by today?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that as well. So for the parents listening, more times than not, you're seeing co-occurring disorders, right? If you are a parent and you are finding substances in your home, in your child's bedroom, yes, substance is an issue. We all can agree on that. The abuse of substances is an issue, what have you. But of course, there's another issue as well, that being mental health, co-occurring disorders. What is going on at home? What is going on when the kid goes to school, right? And so to your last question, I think what I would love parents to start doing, and again, this is there are a lot of parents out there doing this, of course, but
Right.
for me, what I want to see is a lot parents to start opening up this door to have this conversation with their teens, right? You have to have this conversation. Even if your teen has not even experimented yet, or even if they have a solid group of friends that you trust for them to be around, you still have to have these conversations with them because just like me, right? Things can go upside down very quickly.
Right.
For and so opening up this door and having this conversation, creating a safe space at home for your child to come to you whenever they with whatever is extremely important. And also wanting to create a safe environment for them outside of your doors is something that we want for parents to start doing more of. That being, you have to get more invested with who your child's friends are. You have to get more invested with some of the support systems that are around your child that you would love to see them get into. So, I may have forgotten what your question was.
But
This
really,
last
what
one.
what are the things that you guys are treating youth for today? What are you seeing the things that they're dealing with?
Oh, well, the number one thing is, of course, the vice, of course, that we're seeing right now that teens are really leaning on the crutches, of course, vaping, right? Vaping. It's accessible. It's there's a level of anonymity around it in a sense, right? You can really it's easily concealable. we're seeing this vaping that's increasing significantly, which of course I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm smart enough to understand that developing lungs, smoking's bad entirely, just
Right.
in general, but of course
Right.
developing lungs should not be smoking. So what we're seeing today, of course, is um, teens not having the tools, right? The teens that don't even dabble with drugs and alcohol, they're not having the tools or feeling empowered to help the other teens that are. We get that all the time. We get that all the time, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in, is wanting to empower teens to help other teens, and that's something that's part of our curriculum at Sandstone as well. But that's what we're seeing. Some teens that may have just started experimenting, expressing how they just felt like they had to do it because everyone else was doing it, or of course teens that are just dealing with mental health, saying, well, all of my friends are using drugs and I'm kind of struggling because I feel left out. I feel
Right.
left out. And so again, it's this peer pressure. And it's this peer pressure. It's nothing new, that being the peer pressure that's dragging some of these teens down. It's just what you said, right? The social media has just heightened
Well,
it.
we've
And
glorified it.
exactly. And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate because when I was growing up in high school, I mean, we barely had Facebook. We had MySpace and Facebook, but it was different. It was different. It
Right.
was different.
Well,
And
it wasn't this connective place that we have today, and then you add all the other platforms into it. I know you
yeah.
mentioned vaping as a category that we're seeing,
Oh,
unequivocally youth are using, and the dangerous thing about it is it's so easily concealable. You can do it all day long.
all day.
It's not like you have to step outside and smoke a cigarette, but what we're also seeing is the incredible prevalence of youth using vapes for delivery of marijuana.
Yeah, yeah.
And to be clear, and hopefully you'll validate this, marijuana of today is not the same as it was when most parents grew up. The
No.
concentration levels are different, the delivery means are different. We're seeing earlier episodes of psychosis from kids
Mhm.
using marijuana. It's a problem.
It is. It is a problem. And I mean, talking about the data that we're receiving from CDC, from the data, all the above, right? It's getting extremely alarming because again, we all can agree marijuana being a gateway drug, right? Well, look at what vape's doing. Look at what vape's doing. Some of these teens that we're seeing, right, started with vaping just nicotine, then all of a sudden now they're going to marijuana. And to your point, marijuana is different than it was 30, 40 years ago. Completely different, more concentrated. We're seeing a lot more psychosis with teens. We're seeing a lot of young adults, that being from the ages of 18 to 30, more specifically from the age of 22 to 28, being diagnosed with schizophrenia. And those that are diagnosed with it have dabbled with marijuana at a young age. It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate. And to me, I wish I had an answer, but I'm not really entirely understanding why there is such a significant increase in the use of these substances, maybe because of the influx of the substances that are going around, how accessible they are to get. But that's what we're seeing with our teens and young adults. It's this peer pressure, this familial pressure as well. Also with school pressure. A lot of the teens that had to go to virtual learning during, and so this is an all hands on deck. This and right the ship.
I wish we didn't have to have conversations like this, but I'm so grateful that we do. And I can remember the very first time I sat down with teens in 2018, prior to our previous podcast called Teen Talk. And I
Yeah,
remember thinking to myself, these kids are going to change how the world sees mental health, because they'll talk about things in a way that older generations will not. And they are really focused on supporting each other. And
yeah,
you've mentioned this element of kind of peer pressure. But what we also have found through our research and survey data, et cetera, is that peer support is a primary go-to that youth rely on when they're struggling or needing to get some support in their lives for something they're dealing with. What are your thoughts? Because from my perspective, that's incredibly powerful to have peers that you rely on, but it also can look a little like sick people helping sick people in knowing that people can only meet you from their own place of experience. So if you're struggling with something that I don't even understand and you come to me seeking support, like if I don't understand it, how good is the support I'm going to give you aside from maybe just being a supportive friend?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's of course a case by case situation. But again, back to my point of, yeah, there are a million ways up this hill, right, towards recovery. Peer support seems to be a growing industry right now, which is great, which is really good. That being recovery coaches, which I'm one, to whatever that may look like. But yes, those that are taking the seat to want to help folks in the peer support realm have to take a lot of pride in what they're doing, and take it very seriously, because to your point, yes, we don't want sick people helping sick people.
Right.
We That's not going to help the situation. And so for me, again, million ways up this hill, but I am a huge advocate for peer support and treatment. And that's why I will continue to shout it as loud as I can. There are resources out there for you. If you are on Medicaid, there are Medicaid providers out there. If you do not have any type of insurance, right, you can call around and ask, and there are lists that can be provided to you of for example, Signal. This places that will pay. Again, you got to go through the process, of course, but that will pay for your treatment. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is, don't ever feel as if, and again, it's easier said than done because I felt like this before, but if you do feel as if you are backed into a corner and don't have anywhere else to go or to reach out to, that's just not true. It's not true. It
Right.
really isn't. There are providers out there that can provide you with the help. And so that's just where I'm at today, Jason, is yes, I see the peer support realm, how that's growing, how that industry is really increasing, which I think is great. But I also want for these folks who are in power to provide this peer support to understand that you have to take it seriously. You have to take it seriously.
For sure. And it's, frankly, it's why we launched our Nobody's Perfect community and just realizing that the access points to getting connected to resources, it's hard.
It
It's
is.
not a straightforward place, which we've shown up to be the hub of those resources based on research that we've done with youth that's really focused on topics youth and parents, caregivers, educators, providers are struggling with among youth today. And
Yeah.
had a clinical team vet those resources specifically. So to your point, there are resources available, but to be clear, it's not always a straight line. Not everybody is
It's,
blessed with, you know, Cadillac plan insurance that allows them to go wherever, whenever.
of course.
But in many respects, there are some other resource paths that, frankly, are just as good and can be just as valuable in serving you in your time of need or struggle.
Yes.
I guess the question is, and again, I'm never one to vilify parents because I think we're all doing the very best we can. But how
Yeah.
often are you seeing youth at Sandstone that are coming in that are kind of um, legacy youth that have parents that have their own issues or come from a background of substance use or mental health issues that really maybe kind of exacerbate the situations that they're facing?
Absolutely. Well, at Sandstone, family is required to participate. And I'm sure that answers your question right there. More times than not, when we see a teen that is in need of treatment, that being either just strictly mental health track, or a dual diagnosis track, right? That being co occurring disorders, substance, and mental health, more times than not, mom and dad needs treatment as well. Right? That's just what the data supports. That's what the data is saying. Because unfortunately, right now, we don't go as low as age of 8, but data is showing us that ages 8 to 10 right now, for some reason, are experiencing a lot more suicide ideation between those ages, and that is extremely sad. But of course, when we see that data, at least for me, first thing that pops in my head is, okay, what's going on at home? What's going on at home?
Right,
You're 8 years. You're 8. You're 8.
right, right.
So yes, we preach that if your teen is in treatment, of course, yes, you have the autonomy that to not want to do it as well, but we preach on family must participate, because no matter how much work we do on a teen or a young adult, whatever ecosystem they are going back into, can bring those stressors right back up. Doesn't matter how much work you
Sure.
do.
Well, and I mean, the whole do as I say, not as I do model just really doesn't work, especially when you're talking about substance use and mental health.
Exactly.
I'm so inspired by this work you're doing, and it is heartbreaking to hear, that at 8 years old, somebody would want to end their lives.
Yeah.
You know, again, we could estimate all day long why that's happening, but I wonder if there is an element of the earlier integration of technology that is really putting a fast forward on so many of these issues that youth would normally age into, and they're being faced with them so much more quickly.
Of course, of course. That data that I shared, that data that came from that's from Children's Hospital of Colorado. That data, and there is a direct correlation with that spike in suicide ideation or poor mental health to technology. Right. The What we're seeing is like it's oh gosh, this is an entirely new conversation, but I'm excited we're getting into this. AI is a beautiful thing, but also can be a negative thing. It could be a detrimental. It can be disastrous in a sense. And so when we talk about these TikToks, we talk about Facebook algorithms, right? You can create your own echo chamber and not even realize it because of how powerful AI has become. And so I bring that up because, yeah, you have an 8, 9, 10-year old, right? That's just getting their feet wet in social media, right? And before you know it, they've created themselves this echo chamber of other young kids that may be experiencing some negative things at home that they're talking about. And again, being in an impressionable stage, one thing leads to another, and these kids are facing depression, right? Are needing help because of these echo chambers that they created. Obviously, there's other factors that can play into this, what's going on at home, etc. But to your question, yes. Um, Unfortunately, social media is not going anywhere.
Right.
But this is where parents need to step in, and you have to manage what your children are being exposed to. You cannot just give your child. My son will be 8 here in on April 2nd. He does not have a cell phone. There is no reason for him to have a cell phone. And again, I understand every parents differently, but for us, we do not want for our child to be exposed to what's being thrown around on social media. And up until this point, he's been doing well. And we can and again, yes, we need for parents to start to really put some guardrails around what's happening on these cell phones.
Right. Well, and again, not to shine a spotlight back to vilify parents, because that is
Of course
certainly
not.
not our goal, but
Right.
recognizing that, that decision that you make in a moment to get your child so you can connect with them at any point may be empowering them with information that if you really had a deeper look into it, you would not want them to have at 8, 9, 10 years old. and
Absolutely.
and recognizing this unfettered access that so many kids have to information very early. When we grew up, you had to go to the library, you had to have a smart teacher or a parent, somebody to ask about some of these things. And today we've got kids that have access to any bit of information they want, good or bad, to
Right.
validate or invalidate their experience at a moment's notice, 24/7, 365. And frankly, it's dangerous.
It is.
And
It is dangerous.
I don't think it's just a teen problem either, Monty. I think, when you talk about adults policing their children, I can certainly say I spend far more time on social media than I want to admit to. It's a problem that we've all fallen victim to. I think the system was designed for that. You know,
Yes.
I mentioned the survey that we did last summer earlier. The thing that was most illuminating to me in that, when you asked youth how they sought support if they were struggling, number one was online, number two was peer support. So to
Exactly.
your point, social media is not going away, but I think we have an opportunity to counterbalance that with the work that we're doing here to really recognize, like, let's meet you there with some good information. Because to your point of creating these echo chambers of support, you can validate your perspective in a pretty negative way and go pretty far down a path that's not going to be beneficial for you easily.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that because again, my intent is not to I'm not a perfect parent. I will not
Nobody's
be.
perfect.
Exactly. And so my messaging here absolutely not to vilify parents. I think there just needs to be a heightened sense of awareness, a little bit more focus on again, social media is not going anywhere. So what are you, mom and dad, what are you going to do next? Um, because your child is going to be exposed, unfortunately, to some things online. How are we going to combat this? And so that is just a conversation that I have with my son's mother all the time, as we gear up towards him getting to those ages, right? And we would just love to see, of course, we're not saying that we're not seeing it, but obviously we want to just continue to shout that off the top of a mountain. Um, and again, yeah, to these point of an echo chamber, the goal of this echo chamber would be to create one for positive impact, right? Of we can help, we can make a change, we can combat this, we can start to see the data decline in a positive way, right? From suicide ideation to teen drug use, young adult drug use, etc. Um, we can all do this.
Well, and to what I mentioned earlier about my very first conversation sitting down with those youth in 2018 was the feeling of empowerment and them talking about mental health and the things that they were struggling with. If you are a parent and you are listening, I guarantee you, if you approach it from the right way in the right timing, your kid will talk to you. They will
Oh my
tell you what they're struggling with. Will tell you what they need help with, and maybe in cryptic language that you have to decode and get better at over time, but recognize that it may not start in your first conversation. There may be a rapport or a trust that you have to build that builds upon having those conversations. You know, I've had other guests on the show that talk about those drive times to and from school, especially at the end of the day, just really giving kids an opportunity to unpack. I had one mom of five on here who was a guest, and she said recognizing that her kids were all different and that how she parented them and showed up for them were different, and really understanding and recognizing the differences between one child versus the next and
yeah,
showing up to meet them there. You know, one liked to have conversations before bedtime, one liked to have them in the car after school. And I know it's not, you know, it's not always the easiest thing to fit all of these different checkpoints in with our
right,
kids. The reality
right.
is, as parents, you have a huge power to be able to circumvent some of these things, the dangerous places that your kids may be going before they get to be a problem. And frankly, by the time you've gotten to Sandstone Care, you're dealing with a lot of things that you don't want in your home that sure would have been easier. And I'm not saying that you didn't have conversations going in, but there are certainly conversations to be had that can be had that
Yeah,
have the potential to make a difference.
of course, of course. And to your point, it's I've gone to state fairs, right? I've gone to fairs at schools, right? High schools. And to your point of these teens wanting to open up, oh my goodness. They don't know me from Adam as I show up to this school, but we had a teen, a young lady that she did all the research for all the entire state of Colorado, right, of what is available. She reached out to these treatment providers, to get us to show up to the school to share more information on what it is that we specialize in. And I'm just here to give her kudos, of course, for again just wanting to. She felt empowered to do this at the age of 17. And
Right.
as we were sitting there having a conversation with her, her group of friends came up and started to share some of the things that they've experienced and shared therapists that they're seeing and the route that they're going to better their lives. And again, just to your point, they want to share it. They want to talk about it. We see it at Sandstone as well too, and in our group therapy sessions. These teens really open up, especially once they see another teen. Oh my gosh, they're experiencing what I've experienced, and they see that this teen has just opened up and shared. They will share, and so that's back to my point of open that door, and chat with your child, chat with them. You can make a significant difference by just doing something like that.
Right. Well, and it solidifies that foundation that you are not alone.
You're not. And of course, yes, sometimes a teen and young adult like myself when I was at that age, we need treatment. We need treatment. We need an expert, specialized care to rewire our brain.
Right.
The beautiful thing about that is it is available. But my goal sounds like it's your goal as well, and other folks like us is to help streamline that process,
For
to
sure.
help give all the weeds and all that stuff out the way, right? And just to get them to exactly where they want to get to. And
Right.
that's my mission. And that's my mission.
Well, and I mean, healthier teens lead to more thriving adults later. And I mean, it's in everybody's best interest to ensure that we've empowered our teens with the tools they need to live the most healthy, successful life they can. I guess
Yeah.
I have one question. Being that you were a youth athlete, I recently had a guest on the show who does work around mental health and youth athletes, specifically in the BIPOC community.
All right. Yeah.
Looking back, is there something that your coaches, trainers, anybody else could have done that could have made a difference? Because what
Hmm.
she had shared with us is the attitude among coaches when she came in was not positive around why there was an even a need to talk about mental health, in after a 7-week protocol that they went through of this one-on-one and group sessions with these athletes in high school, the profound impact it made and the benefits they all saw from it, including the coaches. Like, is there awareness that people that are leading the charge in some of these things, because youth athletics is so important, that is there awareness we need to be creating there?
There needs to be 100%. Of course, I've lived my own life, my own experiences, that being youth athletes and going down that journey. But yes, I see it. I see it all the time. I mean, come on, we all see it. These athletes that struggle once they're done, once that door closes, or even some that struggle at a very early age because it's not a path that they want to go down, but they feel forced to go down it just due to just the glorification of sports in
Right.
American society, right? As if for the BIPOC community, unfortunately, a lot of these young Black and brown kids feel as if that's their only way out, is that you have to be a star basketball player, you have to be a star running back, etc. And so in my book, I actually talk about that, where it's, you don't have to choose that route to get out of your current predicament, get out of your neighborhood. You can choose education as well. Yes, you may be overshadowed in class by the star athlete walking in and everyone clapping, but that chapter is going to close for that athlete. Your education can continue forever. And so, yes, I talk about that all the time with the BIPOC, specifically with the BIPOC community, the lack of resources in these communities, that being food deserts, that being, we can go as far back to talk about redlining, etc.,
Right.
to public transportation, to it being taboo to speak about it in more specifically Black communities.
Right.
Um, and then, of course, yeah, you just drown it out with sports, with
Right.
sports. And so, yes, I would love to see more awareness around coaches understanding how this athlete is not going to perform at their best if they're getting abused at home. It's
For
just that simple.
for
It's not going to happen. Uh, this athlete's not going to perform if they are experimenting with alcohol and drugs, right? So there needs to be this awareness around. We need to start having this conversation about behavioral health in sports, because if you want to see this kid perform at their best, they have to be doing well in between their ears. And so,
Amen, brother. Um, Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about Nowhere to Run before we wrap up here. I
yeah.
definitely want to hear about your book. I know
Oh,
you had the
man.
courage to write that. Tell us about.
Yes. I started writing that back in 2017 or 2018. It started out because I struggled at first with opening up to my therapist. I unfortunately I fell victim to the stigma of, I don't need to share my feelings. I'm a male. I'm this macho sports guy. I don't need to talk to this person about how I'm feeling. And so what my therapist shared with me was, hey, just start journaling. Just start writing stuff down.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, fine. And as I was starting to write things down, next session and even next session, I started to open up more to him. I started to open up even more. I felt more comfortable sharing things with him. And then before I knew it, I had an 80,000 word manuscript that I was just staring at, and of course I needed it to get edited, et cetera, et cetera. I needed to clean up some things. And then I ended up publishing it myself. But yes, I wrote that entire thing myself. There's even a few errors in it as well, words that I messed up on. But I wanted to keep it that way. It's raw. It's raw. It's exactly how I felt. It talks about, of course, it goes all the way back to age 8 when I was young, my family dynamics, to even my cousins, living in the state of Missouri to traveling to Wisconsin for college football, and obviously Colorado for the NFL.
Right.
It covers everything. And for me, I wanted to write it because I wanted to give folks the opportunity, for one, to see it from my standpoint. Again, not to make any excuses, no matter what. And I even share this in my story. I was always in control of my own actions. But I wanted to talk about what it is that I was struggling with, that being a substance, and just empower other folks to not go down that same path. And so when I talk to youth, when I talk to teens, when I talk to young adults, it's, hey, look, you don't have to get this book. You don't have, but if you do, I just want for you to take some time to check it out, to read it, and to try to make some correlation, try to make some comparables to how it is to your life. And more times than not, I have moms that reach out to me about their teen that's a male, saying he's going through some of the same stuff that you were experiencing. I have dads, of course, reaching out to me because my dad was my head coach up until high school. So that dynamic was a little different, right? I wanted to show my dad how macho I am, how masculine I am.
Right.
That, yes, I see my dad smile when I hit someone really hard. And so I was like, this is good. This means good. Anger means good. Anger brings production. And I get a lot of dads reach out to me who are coaches of their sons asking for advice. And that was the whole mission of it, of my story, Nowhere to Run. You can find it on Amazon, type in Nowhere to Run Montee Ball. And again, it's my entire heart right there,
Love
poured
it.
out.
I love it. Montee, you are an inspiration. I am so grateful the world has you doing the work you're doing that's built upon the many successes that you've had. I know that whatever mountains you continue to climb, that they are going to be in service of others. So thank you for doing that. Uh,
Jason,
it
thank
matters.
you for having me. I can talk to you for hours. You are,
Well,
again,
what?
thank you for what you do, for
Yes.
opening up this door, having this conversation, creating this platform for folks to feel comfortable to share. So thank you.
Well, it is timely, it is necessary, it is important. So I am grateful to do this work and be of service. One question we like to ask every guest before we wrap up is, what does nobody's perfect mean to you?
Mm, what does nobody's perfect mean? Oh, what does that mean? Um, for me, I think the first thing that comes to my head is it's an opportunity to grow. It's always an opportunity to better yourself in whatever area that may be. You can never, especially being a parent, right? Um, you can never sit back and try to parent your child from the standpoint of being perfect, because children are very great at sniffing out BS. And so there's always room for improvement. Don't settle for complacency. Try to improve in some area of your life.
I love that. Monty, thank you so much for helping us guide parents and youth today and really navigating these ups and downs that we all can face. This is necessary and important. I
It
appreciate
is. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. And thank you for being part of the Nobody's Perfect community dedicated to supporting, inspiring, and empowering youth and families. We hope you've enjoyed today's transformative conversation. Together, we are dismantling stigma and providing solutions for mental health and well-being challenges so everyone can thrive. Join us every other week on cozy101.com/imperfect or on your favorite streaming platform to continue embracing our shared human experience. If you or somebody you know is struggling with mental health, visit nobodiesperfect.community to get immediately connected to a hub of clinically approved mental health resources and tools designed to support you wherever you find yourself on your journey. And be sure to follow us on at Nobody's Perfect Community on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm your host, Jason Hopcus. It's been a pleasure having you here. Stay connected, stay inspired, and remember, nobody's perfect because perfection isn't real. Your story is. Until next time.